Hi, folks. I wanted to give you a little bit of feedback on your last rhetorical analysis essay. So if you will make sure that you have the document up that talks about my general feedback for this week, it's housed in the assignment for this week. That would be great. I'm running it just like I used to, where I'd have a page of notes and then talk through them. So the first thing I want to talk about is remember. I've said it like 1,000 times, but we're getting back into rhetorical analysis now. That's the focus of the test. That's the only part of the test. So the most important part of rhetorical analysis is that every single piece that you read has a purpose. And in this case, the purpose was nonviolence is the answer to human conflict. That should be your purpose. So if you didn't have something like that, you were off. And that your author uses rhetoric to build that purpose. Every single essay, the author has a purpose and they use rhetoric to build that purpose. What is the purpose and how is rhetoric used to build that purpose? So please make sure that you're doing those two things. You cannot pass the rhetorical analysis exam without having both of those parts. What is the purpose? Discussion of the purpose, discussion of why the purpose matters, and one unifying purpose throughout the whole piece, and then what rhetoric they use to build that purpose. Okay. A couple of you just repeated the prompt when you did your introductions. Please remember to say something new or to make a connection and then go back to the idea in your conclusion. Just repeating the prompt offers no voice or personality and it's a waste of time. So if you tell me who Cesar Chavez was, or if you tell me about Martin Luther King and that he wrote an article, I got all of that. And that's what they're reading for 75% of your introductions. Instead, make a connection, whether it's philosophical or historical, and our example essays today do a pretty good job with that. So please make sure you look at those example essays below. And remember, you don't have to stress about what to say in your conclusion if you've had a good outside connection in your introduction. You just reference that same idea. It rounds out the essay, and you don't have to be thinking about, well, how am I going to conclude in a powerful way. Just reference the deeper idea of it in a different way. Again, both example essays do a pretty good job at this today. Remember that when you're doing a rhetorical analysis essay, there are three elements: a what, a why, a so what. The what is the terms. The why is, why are those terms used to build the purpose? How is the rhetoric using with that deeper purpose within the essay? And the so what is a light nod to the deeper elements or the deeper ideas that are within that purpose. So I have three samples for you today, 2 full essays and 1 paragraph example. And the paragraph example does a particularly strong job with that so what. So make sure you look over that paragraph example because it's adding in some of that element that some of you are missing to get to the more 7 range. All right, so the best terms for this rhetorical analysis were diction, specifically inclusive diction, the appeals. And remember, when you have the appeals are a great use when you're not really sure what else to do, but they should never be more than 1 body paragraph. If you talk about the appeals the whole time, it's really using 1 term the whole entire essay. So appeals, logos, pathos, ethos, 1 body paragraph would be fine. Juxtaposition was very strong in this. There is an appeal to God, meaning think about what God would do. Contrast, allusion, and the allusions specifically were to God, and that's okay. If there's a religious allusion to God, that is okay. There was one to Dr. King, there was one to Gandhi. Many people got allusion wrong though. You remember, you have to have a specific reference. God reference is about the only one that you can do that is a little bit more generic, and that's because you don't want to isolate as a speaker and say God, even though it might be Jewish God or a Christian God or a Hindu God or whatever it is. Like, that's why that term might be a little bit more generic. But other than that, it should be a specific reference to count as an illusion. So it should be something like Gandhi or Dr. King. You can't just say like, oh, they're alluding to, or there's an allusion to a war. Well, what war? So you really want specific allusions or specific reference for the illusion, or specific, or the more generic God one is the only illusion that works. That's more generic. All right. A couple of you also mentioned metaphor, and there was a couple metaphors, but I wouldn't have used it. It wasn't the strongest term, but it was okay. But remember, you guys, a metaphor compares two unalike things. Like, it's not two very similar things. So, for example, when Chavez states that the burdens of generations of poverty and powerlessness lie heavy in the fields of America, it is much more of a metaphor than some of the examples you found. For example, when their poverty is being compared to burden, so poverty and burden are being compared, and then it's kind of personified with this idea of lie. So you need, my point with illusion and metaphor is that many of you need to return to your vocabulary on rhetoric. What are they? What are the examples? All that stuff we did in August and September, a little bit in October, you need to review it if you're getting those wrong. Like I was a little disappointed in your lack of ability to remember what an actual metaphor was or what an actual illusion was. So please go back and look back over those. All right, so you need a specific argument in your thesis. So lack of a specific goal in your thesis leads to weaker discussion. And see the examples in the thesis that I'm going to talk about. So just remember, you need to have something specific. So in the thesis needs work example, number 1, Cesar Chavez talks about the power of nonviolence with great inspiration in his article. That's a fact. He does. Like, that's what he's doing. You need to have something that he's trying to convince the audience of, something that's more argumentative. And I would steer clear of with great inspiration. Anything that's evaluative, like this is a good piece or it's a powerful piece, that really is not that informative, and it's a little bit of a waste of your time. So by saying he's comparing violence and nonviolence, that is a fact. Instead, you want to say like works to Cesar Chavez works to convince his audience of the power of nonviolence during human conflict or something like that. That's much more argumentative. Or Cesar Chavez's idea of comparing violence and nonviolence and the portrayal of good and evil in a society, period, is right. You need something to finish the thought. Remember, if your thesis isn't strong, the rest of it falls apart. But I love this thesis statement. Although being victorious over our enemies is temporarily rewarding, valuing life over victory is the ultimate reward in life. I would have changed the second life. You want to vary your wording, but this idea is really good, and it's a way of talking about valuing life, which is also nonviolence. So I thought that was a really good thesis statement. Remember, do not use always, no everyone. Remember, it immediately kind of discounts what you have to say. No, paint a picture. Don't use that phrase, you guys. We've been talking about that all year long. All right, so remember, when you organize your body paragraphs, it's stronger to have your proof first and discussion second, and to end with your discussion, to end with what you have to say. That's more powerful. So draw that a little bit into your organization piece. Better to have proof than discussion, or what, which is proof, why, and so what, which is discussion, proof, what, why, so what, okay? Guess what the focus of a rhetorical analysis essay is, guys? Rhetoric. You have to talk about it. That has to be front and center. Some of you are writing a little bit more argumentative, and that was the last unit we do, but unfortunately that's not what you're being tested on in this circumstance. So please stick more to rhetoric. Remember, mini quotes are awesome. In general, one bigger quote, like one sentence quote, and then several mini quotes of a couple words or a phrase tends to score really high. And remember, you have to have direct quotes with the language when you write these. Remember to limit your term usage to, I'd say, no more than three per body paragraph. I like, if you remember, we had talked about one main rhetorical term being the focus of the paragraph, and that's usually something like, let's just say it was metaphor, right? And then I might also say the word choice or diction of, and then a little quote and a little quote of word choice that draws the reader in, right? Or I might talk about characterization and then also talk about informal pronouns or something. So sprinkle in you have a main term and then an auxiliary term that you might pick up. And remember that most of these terms are two things at once. So you can talk about one thing and then also talk a little bit about another. I would not do more either main or auxiliary mentions. I would not do any more than 3 to 5 total terms, but you don't want to just have 2. You want to sprinkle in a couple little auxiliary moments. And remember, diction is not necessarily strongness for a whole body paragraph. Remember to slow down and focus. Don't be too showy with the deeper point. You're still working for a 50-50 split of proof and discussion. All right, so there's 3 examples. I gave you a 3 on purpose because some of you really do need rhetorical analysis review. The first one is a full example essay. There are things I would fix about it. It's a 6.5 to 7, really strong, but definite some fixes, and those fixes are things I saw the whole way through. My comments are in red. So the student's writing is in black, and then I talk about my comments in red so you can know exactly what I was thinking. Example number 2 is someone who scored a 7, and I wanted you to see that body paragraph because it's really good for the so what. And example number 3 is a full example and a 7.5 to low 8. And again, my comments are in red. I hope this helps. Email me if you have anything that you need. And I miss you.